bunch of new friends today. So, all right. So we have karma. The babies, how are babies getting bad reactions? I just can't fathom it. The only way to explain it actually would be that the only way to explain a cosmic justice would be that in the past, for whatever reason, they needed to earn that reaction, whatever it is. Who knows what was done in the past. But the Bhagavad Gita says, actually in the very beginning, is that not only God, but actually all souls, not bodies, souls, it's actually a different thing. Just like you wouldn't necessarily, if you drive on the highway, you might see, oh, that's my friend's car, and this is my car, and that's the guy over there's car, and this car is mean to me, things like that. But actually, they're not the car. They're a person in the car with a completely different life than the car, but maybe you're observing that's a car. Bhagavad Gita says that we're a body. We're also a vehicle, but we're actually something beyond this vehicle. This is just like a temporary vehicle from which we're, experiencing the world in right now, but actually we have a different origin. So the Bhagavad Gita says we're a spirit soul, and that spirit soul is actually infinite. Does that sound cool, to be infinite? Yeah, that's at least what the Bhagavad Gita says. I mean, every other spiritual tradition also says you're infinite, but they might say, well, from now on you're infinite. Either you're going to suffer in hell infinitely, or you'll suffer in heaven infinitely. You've heard that before? Am I the only one? That was what I was raised with.
I don't think they say you're going to suffer in heaven.
Oh yeah, you don't suffer in heaven. That's right. Thank you for catching that. Suffer in hell infinitely, or you'll rejoice in heaven for eternity. But they also are recognizing infinite, but they're not tracing it backwards. But actually, it's pretty wild that we just like sprung up here now, in the span of infinity. But actually, that's not what the Bhagavad Gita says to be the case. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's many recommendations as to what should be done. But ultimately, we're all receiving suffering in this world. Am I the only one? No, yes. You probably suffered yesterday, maybe stubbed your toe, maybe you scraped your knee, maybe you bumped your head, things that happen, things to shake us up. And why is there suffering? Anyone know? What would the Vedic conception tell us? Even the Christian conception, all of the spiritual conception, what do they tell us? Why is there suffering?
We identify with body, mind.
What's that?
We identify with body and mind.
That's actually the root cause. The root causes are a misidentification with reality, but the responses to our activities and ultimately what we're focusing on. So you could say, for instance, what is the number one cause of death in America? Does anyone know? Heart disease. Yes, so heart disease. Why would that be? Does anyone have any ideas? What's the number one cause of heart disease? Does anyone know?
Diet.
It is diet. But there's this very special thing you need in your diet to get a heart disease. Anyone know?
Meat.
What's that?
Meat.
Cholesterol. Now you're getting very close. What is the only way you can get cholesterol?
Animal products.
Yeah, it's actually animal products, and most specifically the most intense forms of cholesterol are usually found in meat. When you have to take an animal, make sure it dies, and then you harvest it and you take it yourself. Palama, Hare Krishna. So now I'm not the one making the justice system of the world, but it's the number one cause. As a fact, you can look up American Heart Association. What's the number one cause of death in the modern world, Western world, and it's heart disease. But you could look actually right there. If people just, let's say, in the Vedic conception, they recommend having an idea of mercy, being merciful to other beings, that this is a good idea. There is a time for violence. Actually, Bhagavad Gita is spoken in the middle of a war. How does that make sense? Because there actually is a proper utilization of violence. Violence should be used to protect others. Like if Paloma actually came in here with a gun and started... I know you would never do that, Paloma. But, like that, if that were to happen and if someone were to hit her, I think we'd all rejoice, because violence can be used properly in a good way. But unnecessarily, we'd all, if Mukunda hit our friend Luca over here, and I'd be like, Mukunda, wait, at least he comes a few times before you hit him. Something we'd all be very like shocked. Why would he do that, right? So we all understand that being merciful, kind is a good virtue, a good quality, but actually we might not realize how we might not be that merciful in other aspects of life, like every time we want to step on a bug, or even every time we drive our car, we're just like splatting bugs. We don't even realize we're doing it, but actually, we're totally like killing a bunch of things. Every time we go and support certain corporations, we give them our money, they might be doing a bunch of things we might not realize. We're actually participating in things we don't realize that are happening. So anyway, that's like a small example. At least I can pick out, the number one source of heart disease can be, the number one source of death in the Western world could be avoided simply by, instead of being more merciful, with even something as simple as how we choose our food items, which is nice. We actually made an all-vegetarian feast today, so at least there is still things that die in the harvesting of vegetables and things like that, because they kill the pests who try to infiltrate and things like that. But it's far less, and it's not directly the murdered thing. So we're trying, but actually, this verse is going to tell you actually what should be done. So I actually want to read a different verse, so I'm just going to do the English for right now. But Krishna is telling Arjuna is asking what should be done now. Arjuna, he's a warrior. He's actually the greatest warrior on the planet, practically, but he has to fight a huge war, and he's outclassed at every level. Even though he's so great, on his side, he's actually completely outclassed, but they have one boon where they had, there was the wild card, who was Krishna. Now, Krishna is actually not an ordinary person. Krishna, in the historical Krishna, was an incredibly special personality. Why? Because we were mentioning something about avatars before. It's actually said he's actually even more than an avatar, but just for the sake of making things simple. He's an appearance of God to rectify the problems of the world. So, there was a point where the head of both sides, they both approached Krishna, and they said, we want you to fight for us. We've seen the things you've done. And Krishna, because he had connections with both sides of the war, he said, I actually can't fight for either of you. I have family relations on one side, and I have friendships on the other. I just can't fight with either. But what I can do is, on one side, I'll offer my army. He was a prince of a very, very powerful kingdom. I'll offer my army on one side, and then on another side, I'll be the personal advisor. That's all I can do. So Arjuna, being quite pious, he chose, you're the smartest person I know. I want you as our advisor. That's enough for me.
Given the first choice to choose.
What?
Duryodhana was given the first choice to
What
choose.
was he given? I don't.
The choice was given who was gonna take was Duryodhana was the first one who has to choose first. So Duryodhana chose
Yes.
the army, and
Yeah.
then Arjuna was left.
I thought I heard because he saw Arjuna first, he gave him the choice, but it doesn't matter, I guess. The result was that Duryodhana was happy to receive the army because that was his value system. It's like, well, if you're not going to fight, you're useless then. I'd rather take the strength and the power. And Arjuna, being pious, he was, pious means like good. Arjuna being good, he was like, wow, you're the proper advisor. So actually, this Bhagavad Gita was the thing that Duryodhana wasn't factoring in would happen, where Krishna gives his advice. And this conversation is very powerful. Gandhi based his whole movement off of this. The Beatles were really into it as well. Martin Luther King, he studied Gandhi and what he was doing to make his whole movement. So he kind of indirectly really benefited from this. But Albert Einstein actually also really loved this conversation as well. So if you would like a copy, we have plenty of copies. But this is one of the recommendations on why Krishna is telling Arjuna ultimately to fight. Arjuna had so many reasons why he didn't want to fight. Mainly he was trying to be merciful. He didn't want to do sins. He didn't want to engage in war unnecessarily. He had so many reasons for why he wanted to fight. But ultimately, Krishna was giving him a perspective which was far different than what he could have came up with in his own limited perception. and also what we'll come up with. We have our own philosophies and value systems of life, but as we kind of mentioned before, if we're running around with 0% of knowledge, how valuable is our philosophy and our value system? What do you think? Just scientifically, what's the closest whole number?
0.
Yeah, it's about 0% valuable. I'm sorry to break the news. I know that's a tough one to think. Yeah, your whole philosophy on life, it's crap. I'm not being mean. But actually, that's a realization that we actually we need to have. That's like the humble realization. In order to approach like a spiritual side of things, we have to come to that level of lowness. So it's really healthy actually, and you know, any step I take outside of this, and it's very hard to study it all. My value system is also just as much 0% as everyone else, their value system. So, but we don't even know yet. We're just kind of exploring. Is this a bona fide value system? And that you can judge for yourself. But also we have to remember how we're judging as well. So it's a very interesting paradigm. But this is what's said here by Krishna. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. In that way, you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. So, meaning that work has to be done as a sacrifice. How is most people's work being done? Is not for sacrifice. It's trying to attain something, right? Who goes to work? What are you looking for at the end of the day when you go to work?
Money.
Yeah, you're looking for a paycheck. You're looking for money. Hey, Rishabh, and friend.
This is my mother.
Your mother. Wow, we are very fortunate to have you with us. Your son is so sweet. So please welcome. We're reading Bhagavad Gita. So he's saying that work should be done in sacrifice. And when it's not for your ultimate gain, you'll get a much better result that way. Actually, this is an intelligent understanding, There's a bunch of, even in atheistic classes of people who have also understood this. That when we ultimately cooperate with others, that we'll get a better result if we all work together. You ever see that experiment where they put a bunch of balloons in a room and they put everyone's name in the room on a bunch of balloons? And then they tell everyone, all right, find your balloon. So at first everyone's trying to find their balloon, and it's like it's madness, it's mayhem. They can't find their balloon. There's hundreds of people trying to find their balloon. But actually, then, so it took like people, I don't know, like maybe an hour, I don't know, a long time to find their balloon. And then they do another experiment, and they said, all right, same experiment, but now help someone else find their balloon. Try to locate each person whose balloon it is that you find. So what they do, they started doing that, and then they finished in like 3 or 4 minutes. So it's like obvious, right? When you try and help others, you get a much better and quicker result rather than, mine. But how do most people live instead? Right? Yeah. Mine. But if we actually all work together, cooperate, we get a much better result. So that's actually what Krishna is referring to here as sacrifice. And ultimately, the name Yajna is actually a name for Vishnu or God here. But also the meaning is sacrifice. It will be alluded in he's kind of teasing at Vishnu worship here or God worship here, but he's not fully, wholly, and solely committed to it as of yet. But in our translation, because we know what he's getting to, we know this is what he means, actually, is Vishnu worship. But ultimately, he, for the common man, the layman, yajna actually could also be understood as just a sacrifice. So, but anyhow, but work should be done as a sacrifice. So what does it say next? In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you all desirable things." So by performing sacrifices, you'll actually have all desirable things. What are some examples where you've seen a sacrifice in your life? It's actually more obvious than you think. Every one of us by the end of the day will be, even by the end of an hour or so, will be participating in the fruits of yajna. What's a sacrifice? What's a profession of people who know how to sacrifice well? Mac, who supports your establishment that you work at? What's that? Yes, but even before them, who's supplying you the goods? The farmers. Yes, the farmers. Why? Because they know how to sacrifice. They put just seeds in the ground, and they put water. They give the fruit of their sacrifice, and then it's all based on the cosmic forces. You could say the devas, the demigods. These are all our young Indian folks we are missing. So, Sohan, Tanmay, nice to see you guys. But they do yajna, they pray, and they rely also on ultimately the cosmic forces. That's really all we can do. Farmers are almost exclusively theistic people. Why? Because they realize very viscerally how dependent we all are on God. It's just their profession. They know they can do everything in their power, but if God wills it, meaning a tornado's going to come, or a drought's going to come, or a flood's going to come, they're in no control. They can do everything on their part, on their end, but on the other end, it's totally up to God. So they're almost exclusively theistic people due to that. But this is what's recommended. Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you all desirable things. And we'll talk about what yajna we should ultimately be doing in this age. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, thus nourishing one another. There will reign general prosperity for all. So he's saying the demigods, that would be like the sun, even the forces of wind, the forces of nature. So many things have to happen. Even it's proven now by science that moonlight increases the growth of vegetables substantially. And if any vegetables that have access to moonlight, they grow so much better than other things. So this also has, a factor. So these would be considered the demigods. And the Vedas, they list all kinds of, there's 33 primary demigods, 33 maybe million or 33,000 secondary demigods, but they list all these different demigods. No, but we're not telling you to worship demigods, because there's also what Krishna is going to get to. Why is he talking about demigods? Is ultimately, well, who's the source moving all the demigods? We talked about, the fact of life, that everything is moving from something else. Well, what's the original mover? And so this is what the Bhagavad Gita will eventually get to. It's the song of God, so it'll eventually get to God. So anyhow, in charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So this is actually what's happening. And this is actually why all of the problems of the world are happening, why we have this growing economic crisis where the top level, they get more and more and more and more. They're richer than ever before, but the people on the bottom level, we're squeezed and squeezed and squeezed on a worldwide scale, ever more than ever before. Why? Because instead of offering them to the demigods in return, instead of offering them and sacrificing, also offering them to the common folk of the world, doing things for the good of everybody, ultimately, they want all for themselves. And they're not the only ones. We do that, right? We have our own things that I want. We all have our own little things. Some might be smaller than others. We have our own little things, like this is mine. I need this for me. But ultimately, this is not what the Bhagavad Gita is recommending. And he's actually saying he's certainly a thief. Well, what happens to a thief? So, this will be the verse we read. Yagya Shishtashina Santo
Yagya Srishta Shima Santo
Muchyante Sarva Kilbishai
Muchyante Sarva Bilbishai
Bhunjate Te Tvagham Papa
Punjate Devagam Papa
Ye Pachantyatma Karana.
Pachante Atmakarana.
Very good. You see, it's like a song. The whole Bhagavad Gita is sung. It's actually really cool, but it's like super high philosophy. Like, it's actually really cool. But anyway, Yagya Shishta,
Yagya Srishta.
food taken after performance of Yagya. So just so you know, Yagya isn't. You should. There's actually how to do Yagya. You know, like you actually saw, we were doing a type of Yagya when we got here. I didn't want to kind of freak everyone out, like, what is he doing, you know, but actually we were doing some ritualistic forms of yagya, and this is actually the recommendation, but we don't, it's actually, in this age, there is a very specific yagya, and we're going to get to it, that we should do it, and even our little rituals that we do are actually really to facilitate the main yagya that we should do in this age. So anyway, yagya shishta is food taken after performance of yagya. Actually, we'll all have yagya shishta later. That's what we do here. We do a yagya, and then afterwards we all take yagya shishta, which is what we call prasadam, or you could say the Lord's mercy from the yagya. So ashina, eaters, santa, the devotees, muchyante, get relief from, sarva, all kinds of, kilbishai, sins, bhunjate, enjoy, te, they, too, but, agham, grievous sins, papa, sinners, yea, those, pachanti, prepare food, atmakarana, for sense enjoyment. Did this poop on me? Yes. Okay. Luckily it's not that big of a room. So, okay. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. This is kind of like a big one in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, like, oh my God, I'm a sinner, you know, but actually, why? Why would that make us a sinner? Also, where's the word sin coming from? You know, this is the translation, but in the Vedic context, it's understood what papa is, but in now translating it to English, what is sin? Do we even know? Yes. Ben actually has told me this, what I'm going to tell you. Does anyone know what is the origin of the word sin? We don't know. What's that?
Without.
Without, you said?
Yeah.
Not that I've heard, but maybe, I don't know. I have 0% of knowledge. So from what I've heard, that sin is coming from, what we know now in the West is the word sin is coming from a Greek archery term. And the archery term means to miss the mark. So sin actually means that which misses the point of life, misses the purpose. You know, like for instance, what's a unanimously bad sin that nobody likes here? Someone go out. Say your favorite sin that you don't like.
Kill.
Yeah, murderers. Who likes murderers here? Yeah, most people don't like murderers. Murdering is a sin, right? Thou shalt not kill. And everyone knows that. Unless it's an animal, then that's okay. We don't actually agree on this certain. But actually, thou shalt not kill, right? So, yes, murdering is bad. It's unanimous. This is bad. But why is it bad? You know, you could say, well, that person could have done so many other things. Why would they murder? Why would they do that? They lost control. That's crazy of them. You know, it's understood. They went crazy. You know, it's people who sin. We realize that these are crazy. Where do we put a bunch of sinners? The crazy people of society.
In prison.
Yeah, we have to imprison them. You stay away from everybody. And they're locked down. Yes, Craig.
If sin needs to miss the mark, then we need to know what the mark is.
Yes. Wow. Yes, that's exactly where we're going. So that's sin means to miss the mark. Just like, there's certain laws and there's certain guidelines on how to live a civil life in society. But if you miss that, you miss the mark in doing that, then you have to go to this place. I actually almost went to prison one time. I was very close, actually. It was when marijuana was still illegal. Did you know there was a time when that was a thing? Now you can't even recognize. You got anywhere and I'm like huffing in like marijuana smoke. I'm like, man, I remember when I prayed that this would be the reality. And now it's just like, I hate it. I'm like, oh my God. Everywhere I go. We went to Taste of Syracuse last night to chant and distribute books. Especially 2 nights ago. And I'm just like, I was like kind of smoking marijuana. I was like, but I've sworn to not do this anymore. But anyway, at one point marijuana was illegal and it was like you had to, really hide the thing. And so I was participating in this and I made a nice little business for myself at some point of my life. But eventually, it had to come to an end. It was my karma. And I had to go to jail. And they labeled me, you're the person who's harboring this very dangerous herb, and now so you must be put in prison. So I didn't follow the civil codes. I was missing the mark. They give me very clear, it's not too clear, but it's pretty clear the things that you really shouldn't do in society, and I chose to live outside them. I was missing that mark. So anyway, I had to go into the prison house. Luckily, Obama changed the law 2 months earlier, where instead of, for what I had, instead of waiting there for 3 weeks for a trial, I actually got out in 3 hours. But I didn't know that. I didn't know they changed the laws, and I was like crying and like praying, and like, I remember I was just singing in the jail cell at the top of my lungs. And it was actually one of the most spiritual moments of my life, actually. But anyhow, eventually they let me go. But this is where we put, the sinners of society. But now everybody suffers in this world, and suffering is actually a result of our sinful reactions. Where that which misses the mark, what's the real point of life? Anything that now there is a point of life. That's what Craig was saying. There is a point of life. You'd have to understand what is the purpose of life. That will all be revealed in Bhagavad Gita. I guess maybe I can throw a teaser in at the end, but maybe we'll build up to it. But there is an actual point of life. But anything which misses that point of life, the reaction is suffering. You have to pay. So, and this is just reality, I can say, and you may disagree, but later we'll all go on getting our reactions. That's the fact. At the end of the day, whether you agree with it or not, you're going to suffer. And it's why are you suffering? It's that which is sinful in your life or missing the point of life. And ultimately, I was reading yesterday in the Bhagavatam, what is the what should we do then if we're suffering from all this sinful stuff? The last few verses mentioned it. What should we do?
Sacrifice.
Yes, yagya. We have to figure out how to do this process of sacrifice. So it's actually mentioned in the scriptures, what is that? But in this verse, Prabhupada will tell you what that is. So we're going to read it. Purport. The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas. Not like Santas, santas. And they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, these are all names for God, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam. You're actually all doing this yagya right now. Shravanam means to hear. Kirtanam. I actually get the good fortune of doing this yagya right now. Kirtan means to glorify, to share, ultimately the glories of the Lord. But we all did kirtan before by chanting different pastimes and names of the Lord. Smaranam. Smaranam is from hearing regularly and sharing regularly. Smaranam, you'll remember. Archanam is actually the different forms of worship we were doing and so on. But they're saying etc. And these performances of yagyas keep them always aloof, distant from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. So if you make a habit of doing yajna in your life, instead of just trying to grab anything that you can find in this material world for your pleasure, it'll train you, it'll discipline you to not create sinful activities, which are actually causing you suffering. Does that make sense? Yes. So that's why there's a ritualistic form of bhakti, and it's called Vaidhi Bhakti. So in the beginning, you learn this Vaidhi Bhakti so that you can learn not to be sinful. Because the nature is, in this world, we've talked about a prison before, but actually this world is like a prison. We don't realize it, but we're all suffering a certain lot in this prison. Some suffering a little less, and some suffering a lot more. But we're all suffering a lot in this prison of this world, and we can't get out of it. Even when we try and kill ourselves, we might think. Some people suffer so much, they think, I'm going to end it all. But really what happens to them, they just get a different form in this material world. They have not escaped this prison house, actually. But there is actually an escape to this. Jesus says, though, the path is very narrow. So, and the path to hell, or you could say the path to lots of suffering, is very wide. Because anywhere you grab, whether it be an apple or anything you like, this is mine, and this type of mood ultimately is where we're missing the mark. So in these performances of yajnas, keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but are also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtan Yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. So now, this is a little bit of a jump, in the purport at least, but he's alluding to what really we need to do in this life. And it's recommended in the scriptures in so many places, especially Bhagavad Gita is actually just a beginning scripture. This will seem very deep to someone who's never approached any of these scriptures before, but it's actually a very beginning scripture. That's my son, by the way. So anyway, this is actually a very beginning scripture, but actually as it unfolds what really we should do in this age, this is the main yajna. And actually we've tried our best to engage all of you in it already, which is Sankirtan Yajna. San is what? Rishabh, what's that? An assembly, yes. Wow, we're in an assembly. We've done it. Okay, and what is Kirtan? Yeah, glorification of the Lord. Glorification. So in an assembly, and for it to be a yajna, it should be offered unto someone. And ultimately, the topmost yajna, and it'll be revealed in Bhagavad Gita, is ultimately, he will say, he turns it be to me. Offer all of your yajna. He actually says, and I'll show you where, he actually says, all yajnas actually, I'm the enjoyer of them. Last verse of the 5th chapter. This is called the peace formula. Who wants peace in their life? Yes? Everyone needs a little peace? Here's a formula for peace. If you actually understand this, you can read it means one thing, but to actually understand it is another thing. But if you actually understand it, peace is yours. So who's looking for peace? Everyone should be looking for peace. Krishna says earlier in Bhagavad Gita, there's no happiness without peace. So who is looking for happiness? Yes, that's why everyone exists, right? That's why they do everything that they do. They're looking for happiness. They're just in ignorance what actually gives happiness. I think, well, maybe I'll get happiness on Netflix, or maybe I'll get happiness on this naughty website, or maybe I'll get happiness here, there, or the other thing. But they never get it. Why? Because they actually don't know there's a science to happiness. But this is the formula for peace. You don't get any happiness without first having peace. So, ready? Bhoktaram yagya tapasam
Bhoktaram yagatapasam
Sarvaloka maheshwaram
Sarvaloka maheshwaram
Suhridam sarva bhutanam
Suhridam sarvabhutanam
Gyatva mam shantim richati.
Gyatvam shantim richati.
Okay, so this is kind of the purpose of what I wanted to do today. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities. What's in austerity? Does anyone know? It's like a discipline. Everyone's very disciplined in their life. Some people, they study all day for their class, or some people, they work very hard for their paycheck. So we're all doing many austerities. But anyway, if you know that the Lord is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, and repeat after me, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. What's benefactor mean?
Who receives?
Yes. The receiver, the one who's benefiting from activity. So if you know that actually everything everyone is doing is actually serving God. This is a whole nother, this is like a higher level teaching. But everything everyone is doing, including sinning, is actually serving God. Why? Because those who sin in this world actually create the whole great drama for why we need to get out of this world, believe it or not. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Who likes movies? Someone tell me, I want to hear your 3 favorite movies. We'll do a science experiment. Someone say a favorite movie. Slapshot. Okay. I've never watched that movie. Another movie.
Hunt for Red October.
What's that?
Hunt for Red October.
Hunt for Red October. Okay. And one more. What's that? Serendipity 4 and Perfection. Okay. All right. Slapshot. Who was the protagonist? Ernie McCracken. And who was the antagonist?
I can't think of Paul Newman's character's name.
Paul Newman. That's good enough. Antagonist. Good. What? Hunt for Red October. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Who's the protagonist?
the Russian government.
Okay. Who's the antagonist?
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin's the antagonist. Okay. Perfection.
I call the Pulp Fiction. So
Oh, Pulp Fiction. Who's the protagonist?
it's subjective.
That's a tricky one.
All right. So is there a lot of antagonists in Pulp Fiction?
No, everybody's morally gray.
Okay. So that's an interesting one. And then last, Serendipity. Who's the protagonist?
John Cusack and what's her name?
That's okay. And the antagonist.
Kate something.
Okay.
There's no antagonist. It's a romantic movie.
There's not any antagonist? There's not someone who's getting in the way of the romance or
I
something?
think it's fate, maybe, because that's what the.
Okay, so you could say that's fine. So fate is the antagonist. But actually, that's what makes every movie a good movie. There's some problem to overcome. Yes? If everything's lollipops and gumdrops the whole movie, it doesn't make a very good movie. That was boring. But if there's like a great epic battle that has to be overcome, some great epic problem that has to be overcome, that makes a very entertaining movie. So this is actually the secret of why everything exists the way it does, the good, the bad, and all the ugly. Why? Because it actually stimulates the glories of one who takes the good path, the narrow path that Jesus was talking about. It stimulates the hero. Arjuna was called to be the hero in the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Amidst an insurmountable set of problems. But he rose above it. So actually we're kind of calling all to be the hero of the world, because there's not many heroes. Believe it or not, everyone coming to listen about the Lord is a hero in this world. So you guys are heroes. So that's really cool. But there's a lot. We're like beginning baby heroes. We're just starting the path of the hero's path. But ultimately, the Lord is the benefactor. Everybody is ultimately benefiting the Lord, even the sinners. Nobody can do anything against the Lord because they're just acting on his other spectrum, the illusory spectrum. You know, like in Christian theology, there's this God versus Satan dichotomy. But actually in the Vedic, thing, it's like, well, actually Satan's working for God and he doesn't even know it. Because God has he's the movie producer and he's got a great play here, and Satan is the perfect antagonist. And God has arranged for him to be that antagonist. So like that. The Vedic conception is a bit different. Just to make it easier to understand, we can use that. But anyway, ultimately, he's the well-wisher of all living entities as well. So if you know that, every purpose of all sacrifices and austerities is really ultimately God. That's the purpose of everything, is to serve God, actually. That's the real purpose of life. If you learn that, if you know that wholeheartedly, you can be happy. You can have peace at least. And then you can learn how to be happy, because service in itself is happy. It's a happy life. He's the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. There's no other, anyone work here? Mukunda works. And no one else works? It's crazy. Paloma works. Okay, good. Paloma, who is your boss? Will. Okay, Mr. Will. Very good. Mr. Will is your boss. No problem. Does Mr. Will have a boss? Yeah, but he has jurisdiction over you, right? So everyone serves someone else, and then ultimately there is someone at the top. That's how it works. So he's the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. So no matter what you worship, who you worship, how you worship, it's all going to go back to that one indivisible supreme being. Because who put that being in motion? It has to stop at one. That's just a reality. We've observed it already. We can observe it. Everything moves from something else. So that we can infer just by that reality that something has to be moving all of this. Something, someone. Krishna's telling you who is, and it's him. But to accept that or understand that, that's a whole different thing. That's, that might take some study and inner praying and reconciliation, and hopefully you get some revelation of that. But anyhow, there has to be one. And he's the benefactor and the well-wisher of all living entities, meaning all living entities are benefiting him, whether they know it or try to do it or not, but ultimately he's everyone's well-wisher. And it's in everyone's best interest, but that type of person, he'll attain peace from the pangs of material misery. So if you just know that no matter what's happening, hey, actually God's benefiting from this. So that's cool. That's cool with me. It puts a huge relief on you, right? Because we're so goal-oriented. We work so hard for results. I gotta get this result, right? Am I the only one who's done like this in my life? No, we've worked so hard to get certain things. But ultimately, a lot of times we don't get what we want. Maybe eventually we do. But a lot of times we don't get what we want. But actually, if we're intelligent, we're always trying to understand. All right, well, this is the Lord's will. There's a prayer. I grew up Christian. Our Father who art in heaven. Anyone else know what's the? Yes. What's the next part? Yeah, that's the part. Thy will be done. His will always be done. God's will always be done. Everything's benefiting him, actually. Either you can try and ride the wave, or you can try and challenge the wave and get smashed. I recommend riding the wave. It's a lot cooler to surf the wave in glory than to try and challenge the wave and just get smashed by it. But anyway, and actually he's everyone's well-wisher. God is the friend of all. Everybody. Nobody is doesn't matter if you're an atheist, doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist, doesn't matter if you're this or that. Nope, I'm your friend. And you come to me eventually, I'll be thrilled about it. And that's ultimately where the Bhagavad Gita is going to lead us. But there's so much in between. I'm going to end here. I made whatever little points I wanted to make. And now if you have any type of question or any type of comment or anything, feel free. We can do this before we do a final yagya together. Anything from anyone? Question?
So different religions claim that they have God the one. So how this one is different?
Well, so if you read the Mahabharata, and in specific the Bhagavad Gita, you'll get everything that's given in all other religions. Like the values are actually the same. It's not non-different. You know, like we don't take what Jesus was saying and say, well, no, that's wrong. What's really right is this. We take what Jesus is saying, it's like, yes, that's amazing. But also look how that complements with what, Krishna is saying. So what's nice about the Mahabharata, and in specific the Bhagavad Gita, that anything you can find in any other religion is there. Islam, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, all the, Hermetic, Egyptian mysticism. I used to study that at one point. Anyway, it's all there actually. But there's so many things that are not available in any other type of presentation or philosophy. Why? It's also the oldest, and our modern science has proven this. What's now known as modern forms of Hinduism is the oldest religion on the planet by far. Yes.
It's actually simpler than all scriptures I've ever looked at. It's more direct.
Yes.
It comes out and just puts the food on the table very directly, without a lot of stories and figuring it all out.
And so many men compiled that scripture.
It's very metaphysical. It's very direct.
Yes,
it's pure spiritual nectar.
Yeah, I agree. And also, actually, that you just reminded me of a really good point, that, like, for instance, in the Bible, how many lines does God have in the whole Bible? It's like 10 commandments, right? The whole Bible, like 10 commandments, and everything else is the depictions of, like, the sages and things like that. There might be a few other things in there. But there's really not much actually spoken from God. But actually, what's really interesting, especially, the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so much where God is the actual speaker. And you can actually know the revelations from God. So this, to me, is why I, if you just read it, you'll experience it for yourself. But for me, this is why I became very gravitated, because I was getting so much more than I've ever received before studying the other things. It's not that I didn't get something. I got a lot of valuable things from them. I still do, actually. When I interact with my family members, 'cause I still have relationships with my mother, my father, my aunts, my uncles, even though I like to dress like this on Sundays and things like that. Actually, every day I do. Every day, at least when we do our ritual worship, I dress like this, at least. But, I still have, like, normal relationships, but, a lot of times they don't want to talk about this, but I could talk about Jesus with them. I could bring something good. I can try to make it a yagya, try to bring it to God in some way. So anyway, you won't find any contradictions, actually. But you'll get so much more than is available, at least from my personal experience. I haven't found anything else yet that's more comprehensive. If I do, I'll let you know. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Piyush. He lives here. So, anyone else have anything? Question? Mukunda?
I have a question that I'm going to ask because maybe it's something that's on someone else's mind, being new coming here. You said Krishna's God, but then we read over somewhere on here that Vishnu's God. Which is it?
Yes. That's a pretty tough question, because it's like there's a lot of semantics to that. There's one God, and so actually, what did the scriptures say? That Krishna is the God in his most natural form, but in how God delineates each universe, and to think that we're this only universe. Actually, in the Vedas it says there's more universes than you can even count. So the multiverse theory is Vedic. So there's so many universes. Each universe has a Vishnu, and a Vishnu, he kind of takes the role of directing, acting as the god of each universe. But actually, Krishna, at least in the Goloka realm, which we sang about earlier, which maybe no one knew we did, but we sang about earlier, that's said to be the original source of Godhead. I have no direct perception or experience of this at all. I just have what I've read. But, yes, as far as I know, that's the case. But I don't know that much.
So basically it's like there's the owner of the company, and then there's managers at each store.
You could say like that, but you could even say that the managers are very much intimately related, maybe even directly related to him. Like they say the son is non-different from the father.
It's a family business.
Yeah, it's a family business, you could say. And God is directing everything through his many different expansions for certain roles. Like each avatar, like we have on the altar, are different expansions, forms of God coming from that perfect time, place, and circumstance. Even there's many other avatars that, you know, people worship all over the world, like the Messiah, Jesus Christ. You know, he was the perfect, I don't want to say person, but the perfect vessel to deliver that message in the time, place, and circumstance, and so on. And even on a more micro level, you know, for whatever reason today, I might even be a little expansion giving some message today, and you're all the perfect receivers for whatever gobbledygook comes out of my mouth. For whatever reason, you were meant to hear this today. So like this. But anyway, everything is perfect, but the Lord is expanding. And actually, we're all little expansions of God, you know, you could say. But we should know our position as the servants. If we think that we're the master, they've got a place for us, like a prison place for us, you know. Like just like a lot of people in society think, no, I'm the master. I can rape, I can kill, I can steal, I can do whatever I want. I'm the master. And they say, yes, go in here. And then they have some master. It's very viscerally revealed to them that they are not the master in prison. So like this is why we're in this world. We have this tendency to think, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the master. And Krishna calls us a thief because we're trying to take everything for our enjoyment. But actually, everything should be offered in yajna. So who's the ultimate benefactor? Bhoktaram yajna tapasam. He, God, Krishna, is the actual ultimate source of all sacrifices. So we recommend here, give everything to Krishna. But the ultimate thing, just to get back to that main point, is Sankirtan Yajna. This is the easiest thing to do. If there's no other way, I don't know how to do. You were ringing bells, you were offering all kinds of stuff. You're telling me this is what I have to do? No, that is not what God is telling you have to do. What is Krishna recommending you have to do? The whole Bhagavatam, the whole conclusion is Sankirtan. In this age where everything is so degraded, people are more selfish than ever before, the inequalities are greater than ever before. Everyone thinks we're in a very advanced age. It's actually the opposite. The human levels of chaos are higher than ever before, actually. So on a spiritual level, this is the most degraded age. So in this degraded age, the only thing that is recommended of us, Sankirtan Yajna. San is what, Rishabh? Get in an assembly, and then Kirtan. Then glorify God together. That is what you should do. That's all God wants from us. Get in an assembly and glorify Him. And that's exactly what we're doing. This is all me speaking about God is a glorification of Him. This is an English Sankirtan presentation. And then when we get, we'll chant the Sanskrit names of God. We're going to do that in like a moment. Maybe with a little bit more feeling now that we know what we're doing. And then, and that's it. That's what we're meant to do. The simplest thing. Anywhere you are in the world, you're at work. You know, maybe it's in your language. Maybe you don't resonate with Hare Krishna yet, or maybe you never will resonate with Hare Krishna. But you have some understanding of who that person is, who that original being is to you. Maybe you call it God. Maybe you call it Allah. Maybe you call it, I don't know, Adonai. That's the Jewish word. Yeah, Adonai. Yeah. So whatever it is, but you can at that time take your consciousness, put it on that being, and glorify. You know, that my dad's a very strong Christian, or at least he'd like to think so. Yes, but he praise Jesus, praise Jesus, praise Jesus. Yes, it's very good. Yeah.
Did Prabhupada said, if you know God's address, chant that name?
I don't know.
Yeah.
If you've heard it, I believe you.
He did.
Yes.
Yeah, it jumped out at me.
Yeah. So what?
Know God's address, chant that name.
Shivadas. Hare Krishna.
I'm in time.
Yeah, you made it. You made it for Prasad. That's perfect. And we're gonna do some dancing. So anyway, that's my humble request to you. Let yajna be part of your life. The easiest, most recommended yajna is Sankirtan yajna. Assemble with others and glorify God together. It is ideal that you find the most qualified people who know how to do this as possible. We're very baby qualified here. I'm a very, very, very small person, and we actually have really great teachers. Many of these guys here are already studying under teachers who they've met already. We'd love to introduce you to all kinds of cool teachers who could help bring out the how to do all of this, how to relevantly apply this to your life. I myself, I can't even be more thankful than the great teachers that I've met. Just right now, no, there's no commitments. The only commitment is that we will be bound to suffer. If we act sinfully, whether you agree or not, you're going to suffer. It doesn't matter actually. But there is a way out of that. And the way out of that is we have to reform. That's why Jesus, what's the first instruction he gives, Jagadish, you know? You remember? He came and he just right away, this is what we have to repent. Yes.
Which means renew your mind.
Yes, renew your mind. Change your mind on how you're viewing the world. Instead of trying to enjoy, I'm the enjoyer. Try to serve. Make it a yajna. What's that?
It also means return. Repent also means return. Returning to the source that you are turning away from.
Yes, that's very nice.
So,
That's very good.
I
So,
have just a simple question. If you can
yes,
just
simple. Go ahead.
just elaborate on the word bhakti, what you truly mean here in terms of.
Yes. I don't know if I said that word much today. But Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate recommendation of what Krishna is teaching here. So he's ultimately going to recommend the highest path of yoga. Yoga itself means to connect, to link, or to unite. So everyone's done yoga here maybe before? That's how I found all this stuff. I was like a yogi and meditating and things like that. And then one thing led to another thing and led to another thing. But anyway, the highest form of yoga given in Bhagavad Gita, which is the main treatise on how to practice the four paths of yoga, is what Piyush said, bhakti. Bhakti itself, it's often translated by Prabhupada as devotional service. It also can be translated as love or devotion. But the word devotional service is the why I'm going to use, because ultimately service is the symptom of love. If you love somebody, you actually serve them. That's, we say of love, oh, everyone's looking for love in this world, right? All we need is love. That actually was...
How about the song "Looking for Love in All the Wrong
Yes,
Places"?
yes. That's happening tremendously. We're all looking for love in the worst places. Why? Because it's not actually love. Because we're not interested in serving, actually. We're interested in getting something. Most love is like a business exchange. You give me a little sex, I'll give you this, finances, this, that, and that. Most love is, what we consider love is just like a business exchange. Real love is, in the Vedas, is called ahaituki pratihata. Means unmotivated, causeless. It's not coming from anywhere other than your spontaneous desire to give, and uninterrupted, and it's always going. It's not conditional. Like, oh, well, Ben was mean to me today, so I don't love him anymore. It's finished. That's not love. That's, Ben didn't give me what I wanted. He didn't fulfill my part of the perceived business transaction of our relationship. But that's not love. Love is unmotivated and uninterrupted. That's bhakti. That's the path that Krishna is really teaching us. But ultimately, that love should be given to its source. And it's said, like, Paloma, please take Miss Tulsi today. But this beautiful Tulsi plant, in order to water and nourish all the leaves and the twigs on that big tree, in order to nourish that tree, you have to give you could say the water is the love, the analogy, to the source, the root. And then everything gets nourished. But when a little leaf on the tree, he might separate from the tree. No, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to land in all this water and I'm going to be fine. How does it fare for that little leaf? We're the little leaf. We're the little leaves of the tree trying to get all kinds of things of this world, and we keep drying up and finding ourselves in miserable situations. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can actually turn and understand that I'm going to stay connected to the tree, and I'm going to recommend everyone I know to put the water where it belongs, at the root, and we'll all be happy this way. And this is the message of how Bhagavad Gita is saying, that give your love to Krishna, he says, Manmana Baba Mad Bhakto, always think of me. Mad Bhakto, become my devotee. Mad Yaji, Yagya actually, that's what he's saying, Yagya. Offer your worship unto me. And just offer your obeisances. Just offer your humility, your consciousness, respect to me. That's the main thing of Bhagavad Gita. Understand God, to try to understand God, and to love Him. That's the two main easy things. So anyway, I'm here to just remind, maybe you've heard this before, that God should be a part of your life. I'm sure someone has told you. There's probably some guy on the campus who is trying to say something like that, in whatever distorted way it might come out. But, someone has told you this before. I'm just trying to remind you of that message. And because that message helped me, I saw a miracle where I was very much expecting to be, going to be going to prison for some time. But the Lord offered me a way out that I was shocked. And I'm very grateful. And that it's not that He'll protect you from all kinds of sinful things like He did me. That's not the whole point. But the Lord is so merciful, and if we just stay connected to the tree and give all of our love and recommend giving all of our love to others there, we can all be happy. And the easiest way to do that is just to gather with others. It's very important to gather with other spiritual people in your life. We can all inspire and make advancement together, because we do all kinds of gatherings, maybe at the bar, maybe here, but if other people are all in that mentality of, no, mine, enjoy, it actually brings everyone down. You've probably had a toxic relationship before, right? Oh man, this person's toxic. They always get me involved in all kinds of crazy things. Whenever, I had this one kid, I hope he doesn't see this. There's this one kid in high school, his name was James Yealy, and every time my one friend, I wasn't like the direct friend with him, but a friend of mine was the direct friend of him. And every time we all got together, we would just get into something crazy. I don't even want to tell you some of the things. I don't know how we would get in this. But, don't be you got to find good association. And so we recommend get together in other good association. We're trying to be that association here, where people can come and do this recommended process of yajna, offering some sacrifice to God, learning how to do that, maybe just learning more. And you have something wonderful waiting for you. Anyone who takes to that, or at least, let me experiment, let me see. So that's who we're looking for, just someone who's might be a little curious to know more. That was my final presentation. Do you think we can try one more time to try and chant together, maybe with a little bit more intention now? Because now, all right, well, I chanted the thing that you wanted me to chant, but I didn't know why I was chanting it. But now you might know why you're chanting it. These are 3 names of God. Hare is addressing the most merciful. There's more esoteric meanings. I'm giving just the very, very basic. But Hare is addressing the most merciful quality of God. Krishna is the most beautiful quality of God. And Rama is the most pleasing quality of God. So all beauty, all mercy, all pleasure, this is the source here. This is what the names mean. There's much more esoteric ways to understand this, but I'm just giving a very surface level. And just when you're chanting, just make an inner intention. All right, God, I don't even know yet that you still exist, but I'm calling. I've exhausted all of my other good options. Maybe I learned today that I know 0% of reality and that I really have no other option. Either I'm screwed, or maybe you exist and maybe you'll reveal something to me. So that's what we're trying to get everyone here to do. Just come to that, humble place of being like, yeah, either we're screwed or we've got something waiting. And anyone who does this, they will tell you that absolutely that there is someone waiting, and revelation will come. So, and that comes in many forms. So thank you so much. We'll just chant once more together. Thank you who joined online.